So tonight, what I'd like to talk to you about, and it's good to know that I'm actually the first in this series because I'm going to start with some orienting comments about the Muses in general and reorient some of our views on inspiration and what the Muses are actually trying to do. So I've titled this Writing Our Story, Clio's Gift to Modern Communities, because Clio sounds dry as dust. She sounds, as the muse of history, like something really quite boring, but she's far more exciting than that. So before we get to this slide, I'd like to have you look around really quick. This beautiful exhibit really exemplifies the nature of the Muses quite well. The Muses are with us, as Jennifer said, in words like museum and music, and they've been with us for almost 2,500 years now. And they inform us, the arts and humanity, and even more so our communities. Now, I heard another word as Jennifer was speaking that I'd like to talk about, and that word is inspiration. Now, as artists and intellectuals, any kind of knowledge worker, he might say, we think of inspiration as a kind of light bulb, a spark that is a bolt out of the blue that comes to us and gives us an idea. And today, that's how we do it. But the ancient Greeks had a particularly different view on what inspiration is. I'm a language teacher, so bear with me. Inspiration comes from Latin, a Latin verb meaning to breathe into. So, in a sense, the ancients viewed inspiration as something that is breathed into us by the divine. And indeed, the ancients would see artists and poets and other kinds of intellectual workers as essentially the vessels for divine inspiration. We, as the people who create these things, are the vessels for divine talent, or as the Greeks would call it, musike techne, the skill of the Muses. And so I want you to think about that idea, that the Muses are instilling us with their skill, their divine abilities as we go through this. So here is the very first mention of the Muses we have in Greek literature. This is from the end of the first book of Homer's Iliad. This is a passage where at the very end of the first book, which is about Achilles, the great hero, Achilles having an argument, a very ugly argument with the King of Kings, Agamemnon. And this argument reaches even to Mount Olympus. The gods get into this, they argue, and at the very end of the book, when everybody's trying to calm down, they've eaten some dinner, they're listening to the evening entertainment, and this is what we have. Thus, the whole day long until the setting of the sun, the gods feasted. Their hearts lacked for nothing in food and drink, nor in the sonorous lyre that Apollo held, nor yet in the Muses, who sang, replying one to the other with their sweet voices. And this beautiful painting by Hess, where you see Apollo in the center and the Muses surrounding him, probably singing in accompaniment. Now, I want you to notice that the Muses are a collective here. We do not have names as of this passage. They are one, they are singers, they are people who help calm everything down. And this is about 750-ish BCE. Slide. The next passage here comes from a very different work, although at about the same time as Homer. This is from Hesiod's Theogony. Now, the Theogony is a very long epic poem. It doesn't really have a narrative, but it's there to describe the architecture of the world to us. Okay, it talks about the different gods and the different generations of gods and how the world, the universe as we know it, comes together. It's written by, it literally means, theogony by the way, means the birth of the gods. And this is what Hesiod says. Come, let us begin with the Muses who gladdened the great spirit of their father Zeus on Olympus with their songs, telling with an amiable voice of things that are and that shall be and that were aforetime. Unwearyingly flows the sweet sound from their lips, and they celebrate in song first the revered race of the gods from the beginning. So many poets immediately invoke the Muses. As I said, he is a mere vessel for their great talent. They are still without individual names. They are a collective. I want you to notice these two bolded bits, though. First, they celebrate in song. The Muses come about as celebrators, as people who show what's commemorable about humanity. And this bit just above it is talking about them singing of things that are, the present, things that will be in the future, and things that were. So they are in all three time states, past, present, and future. That's pretty significant. Now, Hesiod thought of himself as particularly special to the Muses. He was, or so he tells us, born a shepherd on the side of this mountain here. This is Mount Helicon, central Greece-ish. And he says that one day the Muses, all 9 of them, came down from Mount Olympus and gave him a poet's rod and kind of smacked him upside the head, and he was a poet ever after. I'd like to see the evidence. But anyway, this is the story that he tells of their birth. And their birth is important because of their parents. So in Pieria did Mnemosyne, which is the Greek word for memory, bear them with their father, the son of Kronos, to become a forgetting of ills and a rest from sorrow. For 9 nights did wise Zeus lie with her, and when a year was past, she bore 9 daughters, all of one mind, whose hearts are set upon song, and whose spirit is free from care. So we start to see, yes, they're still a collective, but this emphasis on the number 9, 9 nights, 9 separate daughters, this is starting to show that they're both individuals and an ensemble. And at the bottom here, whose hearts are set upon song and whose spirit is free, this is what they are meant to do for us. Okay, and here Hesiod gives us their names, finally. These things, then, the Muses who dwell on Olympus sang, the 9 daughters begotten by Zeus, Clio and Euterpe, Thalia, Melpomene, Terpsichore, and Erato, and Polyhymnia, and Urania, and Calliope, who is the foremost of them all. Okay. So finally, we have individual names. Now, I want to point out at this point that for a long time, scholars have thought that they don't really get individual jobs as the muse of this and the muse of that until much, much later. But their names push back on this. Oh, go one more. There. I think I misordered them. Their names are what we would call speaking names, in the sense that what they mean. Each of these names, they're not just random names, they're etymological, and what they mean gives us a hint about what they're about. So Clio, our subject for tonight, her name comes from a verb Clio, or a noun kleos. The verb means to celebrate, and kleos means glory. Now, you may be familiar with kleos from the KLES ending in people like Heracles, right? Megacles, all these different kinds of Cles names. Androcles in Greek mythology. So her name essentially means the proclaimer, the celebrator. And she is, of course, the muse of history writing. So you see, these are speaking names. What they mean is, in a way, what they do. Now, in this sense, each of them have their own individual personalities. So, for example, Thalia, which I think is your the next installment of your series, is the muse of comedy. Now, her name means the blooming one, like the flourisher, like a flower that is blooming. But it also means one who makes merry. And what makes merry? Comedy does. You see how this all works. Okay, if you could go back one slide, please. Now, I have mentioned for you to pay attention to the fact that they're a collective. This is extremely important. Okay, they are, in a sense, the first chorus. Okay, they are like a chorus of young, maidenly women singing at a festival, at a religious event, processing in, essentially being a living example of purity and beauty and some sort of divine grace. And yet they are also individuals. And this is a way to highlight the different brands of art, you might say, right? The different kinds of expression of the human experience. Now, as a chorus, they give us a hint of real life, of the real lived religious and communal life of, archaic Greeks. They didn't have televisions, obviously. They barely had books, not really even those. And what did they do for entertainment? They go and they listen to people sing, act, recite stories. This is the world of the oral tradition, right? Where the stories that make us the stories that make us understand how to behave and all of these things, this is how it's done. So you can see how the chorus feature of the Muses becomes extremely important, and why it's hard to pull one at a time away from the ensemble. Okay, if you could go 2 forward, please. Yeah, here. Okay. Namasune, memory, their mother. Now, you may say to yourself, how did that happen? The goddesses, the 9 goddesses of inspiration, the 9 goddesses of art, where does that come from? How does that come from memory? Well, first of all, her name is kind of cool. The syne prefix, or suffix rather, this means an abstract quality. She is literally the abstraction of remembering things. So bear with me. Go with me here. So art, I'm not an artist, but I wish I was. Art is an expression of thought and experience. Fair? Okay. Experience is meaningful when it can be remembered. Right? We extract meaning from this experience if we have it in our mind. Now, as I mentioned, artistic inspiration is something given to us, right? It is when we talk about mnemosune, we're not talking about personal memory like I can remember what I had for breakfast. This is a different kind of memory. So this memory is given to us as inspiration, and it's essentially a cosmic inspiration, a cosmic memory, a divine truth even, that we are recognizing, we are remembering collectively, if you want to talk about shared memories or something, that we are remembering as a community and then producing as art. So art is not so much about creating something new, but perhaps more about recovering eternal truth. Okay? And while they were setting up for this talk, and I was walking around looking at the photos, this one over here, Gravity, on the side, I read Christy Lee Rogers' little description, and she says that, when she's thinking about works and deriving inspiration, she likes to write in her notebooks, and she feels like, in her words, she is asking existential questions about some kind of divine truth. That is inspiration, right? As coming from, I thought that was particularly apropos to the idea of the Muses. That is kind of neat. Okay, so I've been talking about all the Muses together, this ensemble, this group of individuals that are here to give us some sort of divine truth. Let's talk about Clio, Our Lady of the Hour. I want to start by talking about this painting. This is a very neat painting. This is by the Dutch master Johannes Vermeer. He made this in 1666 and 68, and it's called The Art of Painting. It has an alternative name, though, Clio. Okay? So here we have Vermeer's representation of what Clio means. So let's unpack this. Obviously, this is supposed to be Vermeer painting the painting. This is very typical Dutch domestic scene. You get a nice look into his house, and his model here is dressed as Clio. Now, she's holding a very, very large, old-looking book, history, and here, it's not a trombone, I promise, it is a trumpet. It's a kind of trumpet called a clarion. And a clarion, so if you've ever watched like Abbott and Costello on Saturday mornings or something, and there's one where they visit a medieval court, right? And the king enters and there's people blowing on trumpets, right, as the king, that's a clarion, okay? I also want to point out there is a sculpted mask here on the table, and this big wall covering here is a map of the Netherlands. And this is an allegory about how Clio is going to laud, she's going to celebrate both the Netherlands and Dutch excellence in the arts. Okay, so given that, let's unpack how she does all of these things. So the great Greek poet Pindar, who he's most famous for writing, I guess we could liken to pop songs about Olympic victors. Like if Michael Phelps had a hype man, that's basically Pindar, only better. So in the Nemean odes, these are odes about the Nemean Games, one of the four great athletic festivals. He writes this about a young man named Aristocleides, who won the Pancration, which is MMA, in 475 BCE. And he says that Clio, her share is to talk about kleos, to talk about glory. So we find out here in 475 BCE that each of the Muses have a kind of domain, a purview, over which they instill their vessels with the skill. Okay, so kleos, glory, celebrating all of these things, this becomes history through the filters of time. And, as I was kind of collecting inspiration and insight to give this talk, I noticed a lot, if you Google just the word Clio, the name Clio, what you get are a lot of references, usually from Britain, about history curricula, and using the name Clio essentially as a metaphor for the idea of history. Okay, basically the nuts and bolts. How are we going to teach our students how to understand events and people and stuff like this? There's a very famous British historian, classical historian, who wrote a work called Clio's Cosmetics. Cosmetics, of course, being makeup, right? And what he's talking about in this series of essays are tools that the average historian uses to understand history. So that sounds pretty boring, that Clio is nothing but a recorder of facts. However, by the way, I love this picture. This is another Dutch master, Johannes Morelzi, from 1650. I just love the kind of smirk she has on her face. You'll notice again she has very large, very old-looking books. She has a cool laurel leaf. I don't see a trumpet, but okay. But Clio is not a boring recorder of facts. In fact, she is the divine skill of helping us commemorate what makes us us. Clio aids us, as I say here on the slide, in remembering what brings us together, right? What matters, what is worth celebrating. It is those experiences that in the past, in the present, that we remember, that are meaningful, that are worth recording, and are worth celebrating. She represents the artistic medium through which we can communicate a shared experience. And she helps us commemorate memories beyond our own memory. Okay, so the past, think about Founders' Days or July 4th or anything like this. These are all commemorations of shared values. And as I say, what we celebrate hints at what we aspire to be. When I teach Homer's Odyssey to my students, I try to stay away from the adventure stuff. TV will take care of that. What I try to point out is that a work like the Odyssey is trying to teach people how to behave. How do you interact with people? Don't eat them. That's number one, right? Don't poke anybody eyes out with sticks. These are important messages we share that we want our children to learn. And this is very much what the ancient Greeks are worried about. It's a different world. They don't have social media to kind of universalize culture. They have to spread it in a different way. So I want to point out today how Clio gives us this inspiration and the tools through which we can see our history and our communal values. So I've got two pictures here. Not before and after, I promise. Obviously, we're sitting in the bottom picture today, but the top picture is what it, frankly, aspires to be. This is the original Parthenon sitting on top of the Acropolis, very large, kind of flattened mountain in central Athens even today. So the Parthenon is built somewhere in the middle of the 5th century BCE. It was just as large as the one that we're sitting in today. It was not the most important thing on the Acropolis. However, it is iconic. It represented significant values for ancient Athenians and then eventually ancient Greeks as well. Now, as you look at it, you notice a couple of things. It doesn't have a roof. And if you were to walk around it, you'd notice that several of the columns are missing. In 1687, the Parthenon was blown to smithereens. The Ottoman Turks had used it for a gunpowder depot, and the Venetians, the Genoese and the Venetians, lobbed a grenade right into the middle of it, and it went kablooey. So why am I telling you that? Because today we see what the Athenians are aspiring to, because when you go today, they are rebuilding it. They're putting it back together. They have organized all the pieces from the explosion, and they're slowly but surely putting it back together with new marble where the other was lost. And so this shows us that modern Athens, modern Greece, aspires to reclaim itself, right? Reclaim its heritage as, well, one of the founding civilizations of the West. So what does this have to do with Nashville? Okay. There we go. Vegan. So, monuments are erected to symbolize. I think that goes without saying. And the monuments signpost for us our aspirations and our communal values. So this building, over its long history, over 120 years now, has shown a collective ensemble, if you want, aspiration for the city of Nashville. Before Nashville was Music City, by the way, music. Sorry. Nashville was known as the Athens of the South, right? So at the Tennessee Centennial in 1897, which you can see all of the placards and exhibits in these two side wings over here, an effort was made to commemorate this fact with this building. So it represents, in a lot of ways, a city that aspires to be an educational hub, a hub for the arts. Vanderbilt is across the street, and this has long been a center of education, this city, with schools like Fisk and Tennessee State and Belmont and Lipscomb and so on and so forth. So it aspires to show a value for education. Between 1920 and 2002, a decision was made to restore this building, which was, quite frankly, ready to be demolished. And a lot of effort, a lot of money was put into this building to bring it back to, well, be usable by and symbolize for the society. It shows a meticulousness. This is something I show my students when we visit every spring. Meticulousness in getting the architecture right. Last year I was here, and all of you that work here have been painting the inside. That's amazing. Trying to show what the internal bits of a an ancient temple would have looked like. And this shows an aspiration for excellence in culture and the arts, an attention to accuracy. This is showing that culture is in the bones of this city, as a walk down Broadway would also teach you. I would also argue that this building represents an aspiration towards democracy and civic ideals. First, it is a representation of the original Parthenon, iconic from ancient Athenian democracy as a symbol from the golden age of democracy. It's also accessible to all citizens. It's in a public location here in Centennial Park. You have to pay to get into the museum, but you can walk around it and visit it in that way. So that is a very democratic value. It is as we see right now, a gathering place for community events. And it, as this entire series shows, it celebrates these community events. And if you could go one more slide, it means something different to each of us. When I was talking to Jennifer and Katie about this talk, I mentioned that it'd be neat to see how people react to this building, to what this means for them. And this is what it means to me. I am an educator and a scholar, and every spring I get to bring usually around 20 of my classics majors to this building, most of whom have never been out of the country, let alone to see the original Parthenon. And so it gives them the opportunity to enjoy what they're learning, to see what they're learning in the physical and in the round. I had the chance as a sophomore to go to Greece, and it was a life-changing event. That's why I'm here today. And this is essentially, this place means the next generation. It is more inspiration. So, if it was recommended, it was suggested, encouraged even, in the landing page, whatever you want to call it, where you registered for this talk, that you could bring a favorite picture or a favorite memory of this building as it means something to you. Indeed. And if you wish, you can scrapbook. There's some scrapbooking materials over there that you can do that, or if you'd like, you can share that with us now. But what I hope you have learned here, my phone will stop, tonight, is that Clio is giving us the tools to reevaluate and create celebrations, in a sense, for what it means to be a part of Nashville most immediately, but part of a community in general. And that is an art in and of itself, the creation of a community. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you're the first to know about all the exciting things happening at the Nashville Parthenon.